All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Lovely. Okay. So a little bit about me first. So I am Tori Shires. I am the Chief Development Officer over at the Rescue Mission Alliance in Syracuse. I live in Beeville, go to the office in Syracuse pretty much every day, but I'm a relative still newbie to fundraising as a whole. I was talking to Christine a couple weeks ago, but prior to working at the Rescue Mission, I spent 15 years on the for-profit side of the business in sales and marketing with a beer company, with several beer companies actually. So the beverage industry was my base level background before I moved into fundraising. And it's actually not as different as you think. Instead of selling beer to Wegmans, I am selling hope and selling a mission and really selling what the Rescue Mission does to our supporters. But a big part of my job at the Rescue Mission is managing our direct mail program. And it's a pretty robust program. Throughout the year, we will do 12 to 15 pieces of direct mail that will go out. It's a significant portion of our fundraising revenue. So I was mentioning earlier, our revenue stream as a whole, 60% of our revenue is from our thrift stores. And so then, we have another 28% really, or 25% made up of the events and fundraising, and direct mail makes up a big portion of that. We are coming right into our big direct mail season. And so this is kind of the perfect time to talk about direct mail appeals in 2020 and what COVID does and impacts and how that impacts it. So the big question is should my organization send a year-end appeal in 2020? Should I be asking for dollars through mail? And the answer is 100% yes. You should absolutely be talking to your supporters via mail. And a little bit, this is some data from Merkle, who is a response management agency. So they actually receive the response devices from nonprofits and will then deposit checks and do all that for different agencies. We do not use them, but I thought that this was a really good resource to share to really kind of show what the total donation, so this is not dollars, but actual envelopes that came back look like. So from February to June, February started off okay on this blue line. And then as COVID hit, you can see that donations took a drop in terms of total numbers of envelopes. But really, since mid-April, donations are outpacing the 2019 trend. So direct mail is still doing really, really well. And again, this is just direct mail donations that Merkle opens and processes. And they process for a variety of industries. It's not just related to one industry. And I left the link at the bottom so you guys can kind of see their COVID-19 reports. This was the most recent one, so you guys can check it out. They also show kind of revenue trends and some other things, but I really thought just showing the total number of envelopes returned is a really helpful piece of information as to why your direct mail program should continue or even start. So the big question is, why direct mail? Isn't it free just to email your supporters, do a Facebook post, check it out? But really the answer is your supporters are still at home. And yes, they're getting email, but they're getting bombarded with email right now. And 72% of households still tell the US Post Office that they scan and or read marketing mail. So that's what direct mail fundraising is included in this marketing mail / advertising mail piece. So 72% still at least look at it or fully read it. And then if you're looking at direct mail response rates, you have, and this is fundraising specifically, but you have for a house file, those are your supporters that you have in your donor database. If you mail out to them, you can expect somewhere around a 5% return. This is a national number. I can tell you from a local number, if I look at our holiday mailings and what our response rates are, we're right there. So we're at about a 4.8% response rate on our house file. And our house file for direct mail for holiday is pretty expansive. We will go back 10 years and mail any supporter within 10 years for our holiday mailings. For our not holiday mailings, we usually go 2 to 3 years out for lapsed donors.
And you still have right around that 5% response rate when
Yep.
you only go back 2 years?
No, sorry. So let me say, this depends too, right? Our average if I look at our total annual average, holiday time, which is our big time, we're at 4.8. If I look at, depending on the other mailings throughout the year, it's not always a 5% return or close to that because of the time of year. So for an off-season mailing, May, June are significantly slower months. We'll see about a 2 to 2.5% rate on the house file, but we also mail to far fewer people. So you have to look at that. Now, the national average for the prospect file is 3% return. I will tell you, we don't get that. We don't get close to that for an acquisition mailing. Our acquisition mailing tends to be closer to the 1% range or a little lower.
Tori, where do you mind that I'm interrupting you while you're talking?
No, please, this is a conversation. I want this. This is way better. I don't like talking at people.
So where do you get your prospect files? Like, where do you get your acquisition mailing list?
Yeah, so we work with, we have worked with a couple different mailing houses. So we've worked with Duply before, but traditionally we work with PJ Green. And so it's, now the thing to remember about an acquisition mailing, right? An acquisition mailing, you are going to spend way more than you're going to take in. So when I budget an acquisition mailing, I budget for a negative return. So, and the goal is not to make a ton of money off an acquisition mailing. Your goal is to gain a number of new supporters who over time outpace what you've spent in the acquisition. So the acquisition is not about that specific mailing. It's about the value of a donor over time.
That's really interesting concept. And I would say for us, you know, we've been looking, and I think it's been like a national conversation now for quite some time, this idea of events. And really, what's the purpose of having events when people are giving to your mission anyway, especially golf tournaments that cost 50 cents on the dollar. And so it's interesting when we start conceptually looking at our events as an entry point or an acquisition opportunity for donors, and then almost treat them very similarly to what you're talking about, as it's the relationship over time.
Right.
The problem is we throw such good parties, people want to come back year after year.
Well, and that's, I mean, that's a good thing. And the thing to remember about, I think, events as a whole is events are awareness. It should be thought of more as awareness opportunities as opposed to huge money-making opportunities. Because once you net out your expenses, you could be way under, like not under, but you know, you're looking at what's the rate of return on the event. And yes, building the goodwill and sharing the mission is there, but really direct mail and continuing to mail is important. So even if you're looking at 72% of the households who scan and read the marketing mail versus email, if I mail out to a donor 12 times out of the year and they open it and maybe send me back a gift one time out of the year, even if they don't even read it, even if all they see is just my envelope, rescue mission has hit their head, right? They've seen it. It's just a piece of, I think about it like we talk about like radio advertising or billboard advertising, right? It's what are those impressions? It's another direct impression that you know that at the very least they have seen it, right? They've at least seen your envelope that says rescue mission on it. They're like, oh, it's a letter from the rescue mission. Whether or not they open it, it makes them think, you know, during COVID, oh, how's the rescue mission handling COVID? Let me open this and read it, right? Or maybe it's just, you know, informed newsletter inside. Oh, what's going on at the rescue mission? Let me read this newsletter. The other thing to look at comparatively, though, is the nonprofit email response rate. So if I have 72% of my list even looking at my mail, with the email side of things, I only have 20% that even open my mail to begin with. And that is pretty average. That's about our average. We'll go 17 to 20 on open rates, depending on the mail piece. And then out of those 20%, only 6% are clicking through and only 4% are converting into whatever the action is, whether it's a donation or otherwise. So direct mail is an upfront cost, but it's worth it if you do it correctly too. So you have to make sure you're mailing the right piece and what it is you're mailing. So then I kind of wanted to touch on what about COVID, the election, people are out of work or they're too worried about their health. Why would they want to give to you? And now there's this big election happening and the post office can't deliver mail. So why would we mail? So first, regarding COVID, people want to help. So why not tell them what's going on? And why not communicate and be honest with your supporters? I think we always want to put a positive spin on what's happening in the world and what's happening at your organization. But if COVID is having a major impact, be honest with it. So, you know, Ashley, I know over at Helio, we work with you guys pretty closely, but a big thing that's happening during COVID is a rise in overdoses. Talk about that. Let your supporters understand that. How has COVID impacted your work? So this clipping up top here in the middle is our spring newsletter. So this was mailed out as an actual piece of direct mail. This was the front. And really, this was mailed out in April, May. But if you think about everyone, stay home, wear a mask. Well, the tagline here is when you can't stay home because you don't have a home, right? Where do homeless people stay when they don't have a home to go to? So we talked about in this whole spring newsletter what the rescue mission's response was to COVID. So in this case, this is the photo here is Carl prepping meals we worked with Onondaga County. And we did to-go meals for people in the community versus the sit-down meals for the people in our shelter. On the inside, we talked about our Auburn program and how for Easter, we delivered Easter baskets instead of having an Easter party. We talked about our thrift stores closing because that was so impactful to us. And then now, as we're moving into kind of the next phase of COVID, where COVID just feels like it's a part of our everyday life, you know, we're talking about how COVID has impacted our work in a different way. So the bottom photo here was our fall newsletter. This is my online blog post for the fall newsletter story, but it's a life after COVID. It's great to be alive. So this gentleman is one of our clients. He contracted COVID, was willing to talk to us about his experience. He lives in our permanent supportive housing. So we worked with him and our case managers worked with him through his illness. And so we talk about how the rescue mission has been working through COVID, even beyond that, because we don't want to keep dwelling on the negative. Like, let's talk about the success piece that's been happening. And then again, I mentioned it before, but people want to help you. How can they help your organization? Certainly dollars are important, but are there volunteer opportunities? Are there specific needs you have? You know, we've posted out in different mail pieces, but also on social and an email, like, we need masks. We need non-alcoholic hand sanitizer. You know, this is the PPE we need. These are the other items we need. With the election coming up, I know that this is a big concern. I will say from the rescue mission standpoint, we are acting like it doesn't exist, right? As a 501c3, you can't promote a specific candidate anyways. You're not promoting a specific position. So ignore the election, right? If anything, what was found after the 2016 election is that a lot of the electorate had election fatigue. They're tired, right? I watch Jeopardy every day. I love Jeopardy. Yesterday, one commercial break of Jeopardy was 4 back-to-back political commercials. I heard a Dana Balter commercial, a John Cacco commercial, a Brindisi commercial, and a Tenny commercial. And that's every commercial break, right? You're just inundated with the election. And so people want to get away from that. So if they can open their mail, and because, right, so that's on Jeopardy, but then I'm also going to open my mailbox because my husband is a registered independent. So I get all the mail. Or he's registered no party. So I get mail from all the candidates, and I just open my mailbox and I've got 7 pieces of election mail and then maybe 1 letter from the rescue mission. So I'm going to toss, and maybe open up this piece from the rescue mission because this is not election related. What else can I read? And then lastly, the troubles at the post office. I wanted to just highlight, the link is down below, but a local experiment by CNY Central, 99% of a bulk mailing that they did went back to their post office within 3 days. We have found no issues with our direct mail program since we've been mailing with any post office issues. Now, it's yet to be seen what's going to happen with our Thanksgiving mailing, but we'll find out. But so far, so good. You know, the story with Robert down below, that was just mailed out in August. So, and we had no problem. I get the USPS like email delivery. I forget what it's called, but they show you a picture of all your mail, and mine came within 3 days as well. So I wouldn't let that be a concern or to stop you. Some last direct mail secrets on my end. Make your outer envelope stand out. So again, 72% are going to look at your mail potentially or scan it, but they're not going to open it if your envelope very clearly looks like a piece of junk mail or there's nothing on it. So every single envelope that we send out is not just a plain white envelope with a rescue mission logo. Our envelopes are custom printed per direct mail piece. So we'll have I should have put a picture of one of those up, but our direct mail envelopes for our newsletter, for example, actually have a cutout, like a little, look like a frayed page, and it just says inform newsletter inside with the headline of what the newsletter says. So before someone even looks at it, they're like, oh, this is a newsletter from the rescue mission. So if they're not really interested necessarily in a mailed appeal, they might still be interested in what news we have going on. And so they know before they even open it what's inside that letter. Don't forget to personalize. This takes some extra effort on your part when you're doing your mailing, but make sure to set up a mail merge where you are personalizing your envelope or personalizing your letter, excuse me. Sometimes we personalize the envelope, but generally the letter. So make sure you're saying Dear Tori and Nick, right? And not just Dear Friends. Dear Friends is easier and will be cheaper in the long run because you're doing one letter. But if you personalize it, someone looks at it and says, oh, right. They know this letter is for me. This letter is not just the blanket letter they're sending everyone. This letter is for me. The other thing I didn't write in here is to not forget to use the word you. The whole letter should be written like you are writing a letter to a friend. So the word you should be in there a million times. My suggestion is to take your letter, read it, and as you're reading it, circle the word you. If you don't have at least 5 yous, you're doing it wrong. Do it again. Do it again until you get the word you in there. They want to read that and remember, you are making an impact. You are making a difference. Thank you for your support. Always put that you on there. And then also, if you have the capacity, do an A/B test. So that newsletter that I mentioned with Robert, we did a test on our response device because I wanted to take a look and see, does it matter the suggested giving amounts that I put on there? So in one case, I started with 25 and I did 25, 50, 75, 100, 250. On the next one, the other half of my list got one that started at 35, 50, 75. So did that $10 make a difference? Surprisingly, I got a significantly more responses from the $25 group than the $35 group. My thought was that I was going to end up getting more because what we look at is, I thought perhaps if I put the 35, they just check the lowest amount box and then send in a check for that amount. It just turned out that in this case, I actually got more responses and more dollars from the $25 box. So those are all things you can do if you're working with a print company. You could do it in-house too, but our mailing list tends to be, for an average mailing, a non-holiday mailing is about 20,000 pieces that we'll send out. And that's it. That's it for my, I guess the presentation portion of the program is over, but I guess ask questions. Let's talk about direct mail. What do you guys what are you thinking? What do you have?
So Tori, I have a question. I think it's really interesting that you guys do like 10 to 12 mailings a year. We do, we send out our newsletter 4 times a year, and then we have like a year-end appeal that we do. But I'm really curious, did you see donations drop off right around that March, April? Like, was your graph similar to the one that you showed us?
No.
Or like things,
Ours went up.
Really?
Mail-wise.
So when you,
So to be real clear, like the mailing that we did, as soon as COVID hit, we had our Easter newsletter that went out because Easter fell in April. And so we did our Easter newsletter. And I said, as we were doing this Easter newsletter, as we mailed it out, we were talking about our plans for Auburn and our plans for our big Syracuse dinner. And I said, well, I'm not going to reprint this newsletter because it's already gone to print, and we're not going to do any of these activities we just said. So we actually put an insert that was bright yellow into the newsletter as well. We kind of pulled a very quick turnaround with our print company and said, we want to put this insert in. And the insert pretty much said, this newsletter went to print before everything shut down. So please know that some of the things in here have changed. And then 2, we need your help because we just shut down our thrift stores, and our thrift stores make up 60% of our revenue. And our donor base responded in kind in an amazing way. So we actually saw gifts go up compared to previous years in March and April. Because then our April appeal that we normally would do is a summer camp appeal. So we send kids to summer camp. So we do a designated ask. And instead of doing the designated ask, I did a coronavirus appeal, and I just put it out there. And again, as I talk about envelopes being important, I did a bright yellow envelope. And just, your help is urgently needed. And then we got a good response off of that too. So we ended up pulling back a few of our mailings just because as we became short staffed this year, I just didn't have the capacity to copyright and get everything printed out all at once. But we did not intentionally try to shrink our mail program because of COVID. It happened unintentionally with a couple mailings. But my plan for 2021, as I put it together, is to go right back to our regular mailing schedule.
And how are you seeing your response? I mean, I think you had just said you sent out your August one recently, and it hasn't been that many months, but I'm curious, now that we're over that initial like panic, urgent, like we have to all rally, are you still seeing the same kind of response, or are you finding that things are dropping off as people are like, oh my gosh, it's been 6 months and I'm still quarantined?
Nope, we're still seeing good response rates. And so I'm still seeing that 2% response rate in the off month seasons that we would normally see. So we're not seeing a decline in responses. We're seeing about our average again.
Interesting. I love people so much, and I'm so glad to hear like that people rallied. And I think that sometimes, especially nowadays when social media is very much in our faces, it can be easy to adopt that people are terrible mindset. And I'm so thankful to work in this field where we are reminded every single day that people are awesome and they will show up and they will support.
Yeah. And the one thing I didn't mention, just because you mentioned social media, so it brought me back to it, but in talking about email versus direct mail, it's not a one or the other concept, right? You should send out, when we send out a piece of direct mail, the direct mail goes to the mailboxes. And then we send out a mirrored piece via email. So I send out a shortened version in an email newsletter blast. And then I'll take Robert's story and I'll highlight it on social media a week or 2 later. So you're hitting your supporters in 3 different ways. And sometimes it's just a reminder, oh, right, I got that piece of mail. Some supporters we only have an email for, or some supporters we only have an address for. And some supporters have never engaged with us at all except for social media. So you want to make sure that you're kind of doing a very multi-channel, multifaceted approach to your direct mail.
So Tori, of the 10 to 12 that you do every year, how many of those are hard solicitations versus soft solicitations, like a newsletter with maybe a return envelope but no direct ask?
Every single one is a hard ask. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Newsletters don't have a specific hard ask within the letter, but it does include a soft ask in Dan's letter, the CEO's portion. But every single mailing we send out, with the exception of like event mailings, like an event postcard, to say, hey, register for Ride and Run. Every single mailing has a response device and a return envelope with postage paid. So we try and make it as easy as possible for folks to give. Every single solicitation we send out has a web online portal to also donate online. So if they get the piece of mail and they don't want to write a check, I have a web address that they can then go to, and I can track the solicitation that way. So I still know that my August newsletter has an August donation page attached to it, so I can still track the responses coming in from that one piece of mail.
Holy complex.
Right?
Like, that's
I'm
hardcore.
impressed.
That like you've got a different, like even giving landing page is crazy good.
So we use, I don't know who you guys use for your like donation processing software. We use Donor Perfect. So I can create a landing page pretty quickly. And then I just go on to my backend web hosting and create a new redirect for it. So, like the newsletter was, I think, rescuemissionalliance.org/informaugust. And so then I'll do it that way. I'll do Thanksgiving will be Thanksgiving, RN Thanksgiving 2020, or no, it'll just be Thanksgiving 2020. And then my acquisition will be 2020 Thanksgiving. My acquisition mailing for Thanksgiving and my actual mailing to my house list are almost exactly the same.
Huh. So hard ask in 12, so once a month, you got a hard ask out there.
Pretty much, sometimes more than once a month, but
always to the same audience or different audiences?
No, almost always to the same audience. So we will have, the exception being our Thanksgiving mailing, because our Thanksgiving mailing, we way expand our list. I go back, I think I went back 10 years, 2010. Yeah. So donor since 2010. For my smaller mailings, my off season, I go to our key constituencies. So donors who've given within the last 24 to 36 months, generally. The exception to this is our receipt appeal mailing. So even when I send out our annual tax receipt that says, hey, this is all the, for tax purposes, here's all the gifts you made this year. At the bottom of that is a response device. Yes, Dan, I want to continue to help you in 2021. Here's my gift, right? And those donors is everyone who's given in the last 12 months. And we'll find a really engaged group of people there.
Do you include asks with your thank you letters?
Yes.
Really? Yeah. Interesting. And I feel like that's very different from what a lot of folks do, but I mean, obviously it works for you. Like, and your 12 mailings works for you.
That is not included in our 12 mailings.
Right.
But yeah, we'll include an ask. Now, I will say for the most, and I say we do this because it works, right? It is a not insignificant amount of money that we are able to generate through our asks in the thank you letters. We will get a handful of people every year who don't like that. And then they will send us a note or call us and say, I just gave you a gift. I can't believe you asked me for another one. Please take me off your mailing list. And we will. And we'll have that conversation, and sometimes it's a first time gift, and generally it's a first time giver who doesn't like that necessarily. But almost now, not every single thank you gets a bounce back. We have special thank yous. So any thank you that is for like a designated gift or was a significant gift that is not just a general operating direct mail ask, they will not have that. Or a lot of our event gifts. So if you gave to our golf tournament and you're a golfer, that's a separate standalone thank you. It does not also include a bounce back.
Damn it, ask the golfers to give more.
We ask them at the golf.
50 cents on the dollar actually goes back to you if you're lucky on golf tournaments.
We did, what was ours? Well, this year, because we changed everything, we actually had a little better rate of return. It usually 50 cents on the dollar. We probably got 75 this year.
That's good.
Yeah, we were able to do pretty well in the golf tournament. That's like the one event that is actually doing well, that did well.
Yeah. It's like the only event that you can have in 2020 is a golf tournament.
We don't have a golf tournament here at David's Refuge, but we have someone who's doing a fundraiser for us. Just so happens to be the day after Taste. So that's cool.
We are in a very similar boat. We don't do a golf tournament, but one of our vendors this year decided to do an annual charity golf tournament. And they're like, hey, we want you to be the beneficiary. And I was like, thank you. I'm like, those are my favorite kind of events. Like, if you want to put the whole thing together, like, we'll help you out as much as we can. But otherwise,
marketing third-party fundraisers is brilliant. You do the work. I show up, talk mission, accept the check, cry a little, hug you, and then,
Right. And then we're on our way. And I'll see you again next year. No, I'm kidding.
Yes. No, you're not. Those are the best.
So Tori, I'm so curious about your asks on thank you letters. Is it like one of those things where you have a one-time giver and you're like, hey, would you consider a monthly gift? Like, is that kind of converting people that way, or what's the?
On every response device, I should have put a picture of one of those up too. I didn't even think of that. On every response device, there is a checkbox. Yes, I want to become a monthly giver. So we give that opportunity at every single go. It's on every single landing page. It's on every single direct mail piece. We'll ask if someone wants to become a monthly giver. For the direct mail piece, on the thank yous, it's really just a bounce back that says we pre-print the thank you letterhead. And so it's an 8.5 by 14, and that last 3 inches from the bottom, the 11 to 14 side. is the tear off. And that just stays stable. And so it just says, yes, Dan, I want to continue. You know, I'd love to make an additional gift to the rescue mission.
Gotcha.
And so we'll have a set amount. I think it's 25, 50, 75, 100, 250. And people will send them back. So
Interesting. That's very cool.
It's something we've gone back and forth over, like, is this a thing we should do? Especially when someone will come back and say, please take me off your list. I can't believe you asked me for that again. But the amount of folks who give back again helps. And so, yeah, again, it's another piece of mail. And then we're engaging the supporter continuously, and it's another thank you that they get. And so for every bounce back that they send in, they get another thank you with another response device. And sometimes they send it back and sometimes they don't. But it's not, like I said, it's a pretty big number that we get annually.
Percentage.
That we wouldn't get rid of it.
So what percentage of your revenue is made up by your direct mail?
Ooh, I would have to put, hold on. I'll tell you really quick. Or at least get overall revenue. 15% is my quick estimate, knowing what comes in.
Well, you said 60% is from your thrift.
Yeah. And so if we're talking annual revenue, yeah, let me pull up, hold on. I'm gonna look over here, my worksheet. So I'll give you a quick idea, hold on.
It's a pretty big number.
Yes. So I'm gonna do quick math on my phone.
Since I'm looking for my calculator.
I mean, it is about half of my fundraising revenue.
Okay, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's about half. And that is just what we code as direct mail. It's probably even more because I didn't even count the bounce backs in there. I'm looking at my couple different categories as I'm doing my budget. And I don't include my recurring givers in there either. But we're going to do, so if I'm looking at my next year's list, including potentially my designated ask for camp, I have scheduled, including the acquisitions, $20 pieces is what I'm projecting for next year.
Wow. Amy, do you know what your percentage is? I just did quick math and I mean, we only do a year end and then we'll do a lapsed and a monthly kind of separately, but we're only at about 7.6% of our overall budget.
We have a little bit of a different model because we're a national organization. So like nationally, we have just a direct mail department, but locally we also do really, really targeted direct mailings. So our list locally, our super targeted list is like maybe 450 people. So small. And so from that list, it's probably about, last year it was about like between 8 and 9% of our overall fundraising revenue.
Yeah.
So, and it's not a big expense for us, but I think our model moving forward, because we're super event heavy, that's our model is special events.
Yeah.
We are looking into more, not necessarily direct mail, but just more ways to increase, we call our annual fund, more ways to drive the annual fund revenue.
So I reflect on, Tori, what you had said about doing direct mail followed by email, followed by social posts, kind of in that same vein. And that makes a lot of sense to me, having like specific campaigns that are multi-channel that feed your annual fund. Amy, we're in the same boat as far as events. I mean, we use our events as an awareness, as a way to steward and keep people engaged to mission, and as a way to acquire new, specifically mid to major level donors is what we use our events for. But there's, I mean, You know, our ROI is great because we don't spend anything and we're really cheap, and we're able to get a lot donated, frankly, so that, you know, we can have this really elegant type of event with a really, really low budget. Like, I think last year we raised 144 at our gala and our expenses were around 7,000.
That's
So
great.
we keep that wicked low because our donors have gotten to the point where they give because of mission. But what we started incorporating is direct mail after the event to kind of take taste as an event and say, yeah, it's a great celebration. And yes, it's the who's who and all of your friends and you get to mingle and open bar, yay. But we talk impact. So about 4 months after the event, they get a report as to what's happened since their gift, since their attendance. But following all of that with email isn't something that I've done. Like, it would make sense to email our entire database, whether they attended Taste or not.
And so here's another thing. Are you only, when you send that follow-up letter, are you only sending it to this year's attendees of Taste?
Well, yeah, because there are numbers as to what has happened since that year.
You're missing an opportunity. So, right? So you think about the attendees to Taste. You will have maybe 20% of your attendees who are going to come every single year. And then you have people when they buy a table, every year they bring new people. And so you have their contact information. And so what you find is a relevant way to get a hold of people is to take the people who attended Taste the last 5 years. And you can do 2 letters. And so your letter with your impact statement, your thank you for attending this year's Taste. Look at all the, look at all the great work we've done in the last 4 months. But then you take this other group of people who went the last 4 years. So the people who went in 2017, 18, 19, or even go back to 2016. Hey, so sorry you couldn't miss Taste this year. We raised this amount of money. Our goal was this. If you even hit your goal, change your goal to a new goal. So you're $10,000 away. We're so close to hitting our goal. And here's what we've done in the 4 months since Taste. So you're losing out on that opportunity of getting those lapsed givers from that event. Because remember, maybe they went to Taste once and they're like, oh, right, David's Refuge, they do really great work, right? It was impactful that very first time, but then there's never been another connection with them. You've let it go. So when you re-message those folks, sorry we missed you at Taste this year. Here's all the great things that we've done in the last 4 months since our last Taste event. Here's the highlights from this event.
Yeah, the opportunity is insane because honestly, anyone in this community can participate in this event this year, whether it's the radio, Facebook Live.
Yep.
So we can almost assume that everyone participated in Taste. And if they missed it, what they can expect next year. But don't worry, we're going to blow our goal out of the water, just so you know, because somebody made me reduce my goal because of COVID. So, which I understand and I'm actually grateful for. I think celebrating and attaining goals is great for morale and all that crap. No, it's good. It's good. But we lowered our goal specifically because our goal is now to fund all of the respite weekends that we have slated for parents for the rest of this year. Yeah. But if in January I'm reaching out, guess what? We're going to have 350 respite weekends scheduled next year, which is more than the 175 that Taste is going to cover.
Right.
So that's pretty amazing.
One thing that I wanted to mention, because I've talked about acquisitions a little bit, I will say one thing we have found to be not successful and I will never do again is an email acquisition. I worked with a local media company and did an email acquisition where we kind of cold emailed people. But now if you think about when you get emails versus direct mail, right? So even if I cold mail someone, 72% are going to look at my letter and maybe some will open it. I have no connection with these people we cold emailed, and we spent a decent amount of money a couple years ago and I got a goose egg. I got $0. And so I would never recommend that anyone does an email acquisition campaign in terms of not for acquisition. If you email your house list, that's different because they're already engaged with you, but don't do an email acquisition ever.
One of the best acquisitions that we have had are warm acquisitions through our supporters. So the idea of, you've got One NY Cares, the run, if you're a charity there, or Boilermaker for us. We have participants we serve, we have people who support us, and what they do is, they're setting up their fundraising page, and every person that gives to them, they're getting celebrated by the person they gave to, but they're also getting loved by us. And the one thing that we have found is most effective in our communication with them is always cheering on the person they gave to. So it's like, hey, Joe, you're so amazing, but isn't that Brandy something else? Like, she is the bee's knees, and we're so glad she introduced us. And that's almost even the language that we use, because we're crazy here at David's Refuge. But we found that, like, you're going to get a response like, oh my God, how do you know Brandy? And now we can actually have this real conversation. I mean, it means you have to know all the people raising money for you, but that's the fun part. So that for us has been a really good way to at least acquire new warm emails. We don't get addresses from those folks unless they follow up with a donation. Oh, good God. Unless they follow up with a donation in the mail, which usually they don't. But they will. Oh, and in all our follow-up too, it's like, hey, make sure you follow our page on Facebook. Man, you have a ton of direct mail. Like, I'm envious of what.
So let's go and like think about, we're an organization that's 133 years old locally here. We've been doing direct mail for well over 30 years, right? So we've got 30 years of experience on direct mail. I will go back, and here's just another like fun fact. I'll go back, and a lot of times I'll reuse pieces that have worked in the past. So our piece of Thanksgiving direct mail is very similar year to year because it works. Or I'll look at messaging that's worked, or like an envelope that's worked, and then I'll reuse it. And then I'll reuse it until it doesn't work anymore. But that's a good way to think about it too. It's like, why fix what's not broken, right? If it's not broken, why fix it?
Well, I don't have a history of all the stuff that works, Tori. So I just need you to give me a breakdown of all the stuff that's ever worked for you and make me seem really smart.
I will say the envelope is a big thing. Envelope is a big thing. If you're going to do a piece of direct mail, don't just have an envelope that says David's Refuge, right? It's not just David's Refuge to Tori Shires. Put something on the envelope, like print an envelope, especially for a direct mailing, because that is super useful.
And we kind of experimented with that too, because ours is smaller. We printed, instead of doing like an 8.5 by 11 letter, we printed a card, because we do a local ambassador every year. So we printed a card with the kids' pictures on it, and then we had our volunteers hand address each envelope.
Yeah.
So it's not just, your generic, it looks like a card that's been addressed to you. And that actually, we got a great rate of return on that.
If you can hand address, that's great. We've tested, and we do get some good responses with, when we send a few pieces of direct mail, it will look like handwriting. Because we send so many, it's just too hard to hand address.
Yeah.
But hand addressing or to a type or font that mimics hand addressing is really important. And super useful. And what was the other thing I was just going to mention that has been really useful with the mail piece? Oh, we will often test with stamps versus indicia. So stamps will generally do a little better, nonprofit stamps versus indicia. Are you guys set up at the post office to do bulk mailing? Good. Make sure. You should do that, Tim. If you're not, you should double check. You guys probably are.
Yeah, I think.
But you will save a ton of money. You will save a ton in postage costs. You should definitely do that. And I also find that when we do our bigger mailings with a mail house, we save even more. I don't know how they get even better rates. But
they do, which is irritating. So we have that with the post office, but when we do it through a bigger thing, it's like, no, we're going to use ours because we save
they get a better rate
per piece.
Yeah.
We should save that 3 cents, not them.
So that's sometimes helpful. Those are, just kind of things. And then we also put a little note on our business reply envelopes. So it's just a little like tiny thing on the outside because we pay for postage. We'll put a tiny little thing that says your stamp is an additional gift.
Right. Ours is like your stamp is greatly appreciated or something.
Yeah. Ours will say like your stamp is an additional gift, and we'll probably with return stamps, it's probably about $2,000 a year in just return stamps that we get. So that's always good.
Huh.
When every cent counts. So
Man, I don't actually think I've talked to someone who knows as much about direct mail. Like seriously, somebody who's like whole world has been in this direct mail, like this is how you test them. These are, and I'd love to see the spreadsheets you work off to see which things are the.
So here's another cool thing I do as I plan, because we have such a big, robust direct mail program. I do a drill down every year as I'm budgeting, because you think about direct mail for us, our direct mail comes in throughout the year. So I'll send my Thanksgiving mailing, and I should open up my spreadsheet. I will receive, I look at month by month, how much of that one mailing, where the revenue falls for that month. So I want to give an example. Hold on. So I'm going to talk about my Thanksgiving appeal, right? I'm going to look at, just because it's at the top, my Thanksgiving 2 appeal will go out in October. And I know that in the month of October, 66% of that revenue from that mailing comes in October. Another 24% comes in December, 9% in December, and January 1%. Wow. So if I'm budgeting that this piece of direct mail is going to bring in $10,000, I know of that, $6,600 is in October, $2,400 is in November, $900 is in December, and $100 is in January. Because I can't just budget and just say, oh, in October, Thanksgiving 2 is going to bring in $10,000, because that's not what happens. And then that messes up with all the program's budgets. So I go through and I analyze every piece of direct mail that comes through by month. I use Tableau. I love Tableau. It's my favorite thing. It's a data visualization program. Costs like $600 a year. For nonprofits under $2 million, it's free.
Oh, that's us.
Yeah, so you can go to Tableau and they give you a nonprofit license for free if you're an under $2 million organization. But otherwise, it's like $600 for the year. But you can plug in and manipulate data that you can't do in Excel. So I can look at the appeal, when it came in, month by month, where the revenue comes. And then I look at that and I budget it out. Because if I send out an appeal in August and my fiscal year ends in September, I cannot assume that all my dollars for that mailing are coming in this budget year.
Yeah.
And then I also cannot understand this. We will get direct mail response devices from 2015.
Yes.
In 2020. I'm like, why?
80-year-old women, it's always my assumption. I'm so judgy, but I feel like it's like my grandmother used to take it and tuck it away and then forget about it. And then she's sitting in her desk 3 years later. Oh, yes, I wanted to write them a check.
Yeah, if I can, let's see, what is the, it's always, that one's always crazy to me. But so generally I'll look at all those big mail pieces and then figure that out from there. And then there's always residuals that will kind of pop in throughout the year. And I budget that as like different direct mail, all other direct mail. That's my
favorite thing to do when you get something from like 2015 is like pick up the phone and call them. And if you don't have their number, I will Google search that address till I'm blue in the face to try and find a phone number. If I can, I will do like I have sparkly little notes that have like glitter and don't look like a work card, right? They look like I'm sending my grandma a note card, and I just write this little note like, oh, it's so amazing. And I put my cell phone number in there and I just pray they call me, because I want to know. Like, I want to know, why now? Tell me about you. How'd you get this? Because I know it's going to be a great conversation. Because
or why did you find this one today? Like, why did this happen? So that one's always fun to see when we get some of those.
Oh, yay. So, Tori, I so appreciate and love the fact that you came on and literally spilled your crazy big brain all over us. Like, this has been really fantastic. Super grateful for your time. I know time is so valuable right now. I know you guys are really busy. And so I really just wanted to say thank you. And Tim and Amy, I don't know if you guys have any questions before we pop off.
No, this is great. Thank you.
And I don't think I have questions. I've just been trying to soak this in like a sponge so that I can learn so much more.
I also talk really fast. So sorry, you're probably like frantically writing.
It's recording. We'll share the recording. And I tell you, Tim, the first Wednesday of every month, you pop on and we'll have different content. I know next month's content is going to be more about the in-person asks during COVID, during elections. Are people getting in-person meetings? How are those happening? So that's going to be the topic for next month. Yeah, so it'll be great.
Well, I greatly appreciate the invite that I had today, and I will try to hop on every month. Actually, I need to persuade my director to let me be a member of the organization so I could get even more.
Well, Tim, I tell you, you email us and we will send you any information that we can. Your director, I'm pretty sure, is aware of AFP. And listen, the local network here is what I find most valuable, but there are some really amazing resources. When you're a member, you can access all sorts of reports and white papers that are done by AFP International that talk about giving trends across the board. There's a lot of data in there, and it's accessed at your fingertips. So if you say right now, yes, direct mail is my thing, or if you say it's not direct mail right now, I need to know about establishing monthly giving programs, you can go and get a ton of information from national or international, and then pick the brains of all the people on AFP. It's really fantastic.
And Tim, just so you know, AFP also does offer scholarships. I'm not sure what organization you're with because I hopped on late, but there's a bunch of information about our local scholarships right on our website as well.
I'll look all that up. I'm actually with Catholic Charities in Oswego County.
Oh,
so,
cool.
And like I said, this is new for me. So it's kind of exciting to hear everything you're doing. A little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Intimidating, but very exciting in the process.
Yeah, but so think about, like, don't let it be intimidating, right? We have a huge direct mail program. We have a huge donor pool to pull from. If all this means is you're doing one mailing a year and you're going from 0 to 1 and you're like looking at your donor pool, or from 1 to 4, that's a first step, right? It doesn't have to be, if anything, if you're that small, you don't have necessarily the resources to be able to do 20 mailings a year. So you do 1 mailing a year, or you do 2 mailings a year, right? You do a mid-year report and a year-end appeal, and that's plenty. And so the stats and kind of the tips that I mentioned still apply. So you still want to talk about how COVID is impacting you. You still want to pay attention to the envelope that you're going to use. And even if it just meant that, you know, if you have a small pool of people and you're going to mail to 500 and you can get volunteers to handwrite 500 envelopes, you're going to get 500 people to look at that, because whenever someone sees a handwritten envelope, they're going to open it. So definitely don't be intimidated by, like, this is on a bigger scale, but you can scale this down. That's the great thing about mail.
Yeah. I mean,
well,
Tim,
and you're really right too about the envelope, because I do know that they send out an annual appeal letter, and I do know that I heard last year one of the biggest things that I heard about that letter was the envelope did not fit the letter. The letter had to be folded to fit the envelope. They ordered the envelopes without taking the letter size into consideration, and people mentioned that your envelope really wasn't meant for that letter. So people do pay attention to even little details.
Yeah. Tim, do you work with the Shineman Foundation at all?
We have been working with them a little bit, and I need to watch more. So they did some trainings recently that I missed, and unfortunately, I hate to blame things on COVID, but during COVID, I was kind of repositioned to do some other work, and so I never really followed through on some of this stuff. So what I look at today is, yeah, I can say it's intimidating a little bit, but at the same time, it reinforces some of the discussions that I've had with the director at Catholic Charities just in the last few days about what we can do, what we need to do, the letters that need to get out, the information that we need to collect. And so it's actually, this really kind of motivates me to jump right into it, kind of feet first and say, okay, we're going to make this happen. So
that's so good to hear, Tim. And the truth of the matter is, because you kind of shifted roles and were more in like a frontline capacity, you had a beautiful view of what was going on. And it's just going to better arm you when you're actually calling the people that respond to this mailing and saying, hey, thanks so much. It means so much. Here's what I saw. This is what you're doing. I mean, that's the real bread and butter of the whole jam, is talking to the people, you know. You like that, bread and butter and jam?
Can I just mention 2 more things really quick that I just thought of?
I guess so, Brainiac.
So If you want resources of really cool other organizations' appeals that are out there, SOFII, I think it's SOFII, is like an international organization, and they'll highlight a lot of international appeals, but it's really cool to look at those letters. And then the other thing to remember when you were sending out any direct mail appeal is to make sure you are writing at like a 7th grade level and not any higher. And the app to look at that, it's not even an app. The website is called Hemingway Editor. It's called the Hemingway app. And so I literally I will just copy and paste my whole appeal letter into Hemingway app, and it tells you what your grade level is for your letter. And then it'll also pick out like, hey, this paragraph has too many sentences, and this sentence is too long, and you have too many adverbs. And like it'll point out some really cool things. I use that all the time to edit stuff now. Hemingway Editor. So Hemingway Editor and SOFII are 2 really good resources. And then I did put in my presentation all the other resources that I used for.
Yeah. And Tori, we'll share that with the folks who registered today, but we'll also put that up on our site. That's amazing.
I'll send it over to you.
Oh, yay. This has been super fun.
Yeah, thank you for having
this has really been great. And Tori, Christine, I'd love to get your thoughts too. I feel like this should be a full luncheon and not just a happy hour.
I was going to wait until she wasn't standing there to ask you your thoughts, but I'm like, this is so much content, and this could really be one of our luncheons moving forward. Yeah.
I would love that.
And especially, because we are all in different positions as organizations. And I mean, you're up here with like 12 appeals a year. We're at like 2 appeals a year here at David's Refuge. I know some concepts, but just the information that you have and like the resources, this Hemingway app, hello, hallelujah, make me look smart. That's what I was looking for. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely see what we can do in 2021 if you'd be willing.
Yeah.
Something tells me you're going to be really involved in AFP here, Ms. Tori, and you too, Tim. Would love it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, though. I'd be happy to do a bigger presentation, and I'm going to add a couple things to my slides before I send them to you if you put them up, just to include things like SOFII and Hemingway app, because those are really
that would be fantastic.
So I'm just going to update a few of those things before I forget. And then, again, because there's things that we don't think of, like the response device, like the return envelope, and happy to talk about those.
Yay.
Awesome.
Wow, I love it. And I'm super grateful for your time.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tori.
Well, have a good night, everyone.
Absolutely. We'll see everybody first Wednesday of October. Back, same place, right?
Yes.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Bye, friends. Thank you.
Bye.